On a summer day in Port Moresby, the heat is bearing down. And inside Papua New Guinea's National Museum, hundreds of thousands of valuable artefacts are at risk.
These collections, the national collections, are under our custody, and we are responsible and mandated by law to look after these things. And if we don't, we will be failing the country and the people of Papua New Guinea. That's a worrying part of it and very stressful to the staff.
For more than 6 months, the building's air conditioning system has been broken. Acting Director Alois Kwaso
There's a new setup.
says managerial changes meant the museum couldn't access money to get it fixed.
And they should be kept under certain temperature room conditions or humidity. Most of these things were collected during the colonial period. This is before independence.
Storerooms like these contain rare artefacts, artworks, stuffed animals and archaeological objects, some of them dating back hundreds, even thousands of years.
That object, the wooden seals and others of them, the wooden objects in the storage, they're warping, meaning they're bending. The wood borer damaging this object.
Sometimes it's a bit sad because you get attached to the collections. So these are wet specimens. They're all stored in alcohol, ethanol. Venomous snakes, the topmost venomous snakes. It's some part of PNG that we're gonna, some historical part of PNG that's been lost, and we see it deteriorating every day. I'll just get some alcohol there.
It's also having an impact on staff. In October, health officials found workers were showing signs of heat exhaustion, fatigue, dizziness, and were at risk from exposure to mould and chemicals.
There are no windows. It's all a tight fit. So you have something here that's just circulating and you're inhaling it constantly. And it's a challenge. We come to work every day, but we're forced to limit our time interacting with the specimens.
But it's not the only museum in the region facing challenges. Last month, the Tukuaho Museum in Tonga was battered by wet weather.
There was a lot of flooding that affected their roof, and the roof had caved in.
It is an extraordinary part of the world, and it's one that needs our help at the moment.
So the Australian Museum in Sydney is launching a new program to help cultural institutions across the Pacific.
So the Pasifika Tauhi project, the aim of it is to work with museums in the Pacific to assist in preservation and revitalisation of cultural heritage.
The pilot program is managed by the museum but funded by the United States government and will initially roll out across PNG, Vanuatu, Tonga and Solomon Islands.
This is soft diplomacy with a real edge because there's an urgency to do this, because many of these communities are in dire straits now because of the impacts of climate change, and we don't want them to lose any part of their cultural heritage.
There are 65,000 items from the Pacific in this collection. Some are here on display, but there are others, including ancestral remains, that are considered so sacred they can't be filmed.
This is from my island of New Britain.
Papua New Guinean archivist Stephen Gagau is giving us a special tour of masks from his island, East New Britain.
As someone who comes from the area where these masks were made, how do you feel looking at them and seeing them?
I feel that I'm connecting to my ancestors. It's the feeling is that you're honoring them for being here.
The purpose of the project is that we consult and talk with the people on the ground who actually create these objects, how they would like to preserve it, how they would like to keep it.
But this institution, and others like it, are under pressure not just to help with preservation techniques overseas, but also to connect the most sacred objects in their own collections with traditional owners.
People back in Papua New Guinea just don't know that their ancestors are being held overseas.
Jason Karawiga is a Papua New Guinean archaeologist at the University of Queensland. Today he's running a session at the Australian Archaeological Conference in Cairns.
It's estimated that there's around 7,000 human remains from Melanesia and across the Pacific more generally that are currently held in institutions in America and Europe and Australia. I think the onus is on these institutions that have these remains in the first place to reach back and say, hey, look, these are your ancestors. We've got the moral obligation to let you know, but also to ask you, hey, what do you want done with these?
Director of the Australian Museum, Kim McKay, says while repatriation is important, it is a difficult task.
It's a very lengthy process, a very costly process. You've got to ensure that the identity of the individual is well known, that the provenance of that individual is correct. You don't want to repatriate the wrong set of remains to a community.
There is no policies in place at the moment, so we've been working with government officials in PNG within the cultural sector to navigate that safely.
The Australian Museum says the Pasifika Tauhi project can help ensure items are safe when or if they're returned to local communities.
Back at the National Museum in Papua New Guinea, the aircon is still being fixed and visitors are being asked to limit their time in the gallery. And workers now begin the long and challenging process of assessing how much damage has been done and figuring out how to prevent it in the future.
Since we don't have the capacity, we have to bring in someone from outside, probably from Australia or someone else who is willing to help one of those museums.
We really need to be exposed to different ways of taking care of our specimens and our artifacts, and this could be a very good way. If not learning from Australia, then we might meet up with people from other Pacific countries.